Your Law Firm's Secret Weapon, episode 237. Are you ready to make your law firm a profit-generating machine that will free up your time and skyrocket your impact? With more than 2 decades of business growth experience and having proven that you can be successful while prioritizing your family and your impact, introducing the Profit with Law podcast. I am your host, the creator of the Firm Differentiator 10X Effect, Moshe Amsel. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Profit with Law podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Amsel, and today I want to talk to you about your law firm's secret weapon. Now, this is something that to some might be obvious, but to most it is not. And it's so simple and yet so difficult to implement and to achieve that I think it's important for us to talk about it today. Now, this episode might be pretty short, but what I cover in this episode is so important, so profound, that you may need to listen to it twice or 3 times to really wrap your head around it. Here's the deal. There are going to be times in your law firm ownership that you're going to know you need to take a step in your growth, and you're going to hesitate because you don't know if you're ready. And this is a tool that you can use in any of those scenarios to allow you to grow into that decision without needing to make that decision in the heat of the moment at that time. One of the most common ways that this rears its head is when you start to feel like you're at full capacity and you're working a ton, way more than you want to, because you need to sell, get clients, you need to fulfill and serve those clients, and at the same time, you need to manage the business. You need to generate invoices and collect money and go after people who are not paying their invoices and maybe order the office supplies. And when you're trying to do all those things, there's just not enough time in the day. So you suddenly come to realize, oh, I need help. I need to hire somebody. But the amount of revenue you're bringing in is not enough to justify bringing that person on. So what do you do? Now, sure, we have episodes that we've talked about where you can, bring on somebody low level to take some of those low level tasks off your plate, free you up to do the more higher level tasks. And sure, that works if you can afford to bring on that low level person. But what if you simply can't do that? What if your obligations are too great and you're relying on the money coming from the firm? Or what if you're so inefficient, or you're working so hard, but yet you don't have enough money that you feel you can commit to having somebody come onto your team, whether it be a low-level staffer or another attorney, anywhere in between. Now, the secret weapon is your pricing of your services. When we talk about pricing, the first thing to understand is that price is completely arbitrary. There is no rule book around pricing. I'll say that with one caveat. It's possible that within your particular state and your rules of professional conduct, or perhaps within the area of law that you practice, there may be limits as to what you can charge set by those governing bodies. So that aside, there are no rules around how you price your services. And you have the ability to raise your prices. Now, before I go into details of, how to raise your prices, things like that, let me just paint a scenario so that you can understand the power of raising your prices. So let's say that you're in this example that we laid out where, you're working hard, you're working 60 hours a week, and you're doing really well as far as how much billable time you have. I'm not going to try to do math live here on the podcast, but I am going to pull up a calculator and I'm going to punch in some numbers that I'm going to run through with you. So let's say you're working 60 hours a week. Let's say that you are clearing billable, collectible time of 20 hours a week, right? And let's say that you're charging $250 an hour. So that means that you are billing or collecting $5,000 a week. And if you multiply that times 52 weeks, let's just do times 48 weeks. Okay, maybe you're taking some time off, holidays, weekend, long weekends, a little vacation here and there, whatever it is. We'll do 48 weeks. You're bringing in $240,000 gross. Now, we all know that you have expenses and you're not keeping all that money, right? But you have a respectable income for you. But if you were to try to siphon off a salary for somebody else, say $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, now there's not enough money for you to feed yourself, right? Well, one of the options that you have is raise your rates. Now, let's say that you went up simply $50 an hour, and we use the same amount of billable hours, 20 hours a week, times 48 weeks, you're going to be bringing in an extra $48,000. Well, that extra $48,000 is the salary of the person that you were looking to hire, or close to it. Or by charging more, maybe you don't have to work as hard. Maybe you can say no to more opportunities because you're charging more, because you're collecting more. And the interesting or funny thing is that we get into our heads and we say, oh, but if I charge more, people are not going to use me. They're not going to say yes to work with me. And to that argument, I'm simply going to ask you a question, and that is, do you want to be the Walmart of law? Do you want people to come to you because you're the cheapest attorney in town? Or do you want people to come to you because you're the best at what you do? Because you provide the best customer service? Because you are the most communicative? Because there's so many other things that could be your unique selling proposition. You don't want price to be the one. So if you don't want to be the cheapest attorney in town, if you don't want people to come to you because you're the least expensive, then it actually is better for you if you're more expensive. Why do you think people go to an attorney that costs $500 an hour, $600 an hour? Because they charge $500 or $600 an hour. Sure, it's possible that they have some great cases to talk about where they've won those cases, or it's possible that they have a large stream of clients that have come before you that have, that are talking great things about the firm. But the reality of the situation is that if I wanted the best attorney for whatever it is that I was doing, and I went and had a meeting with them, and they turned around and said, hey, I'm $300 an hour, I'm $250 an hour, I would keep looking. Not because I want to spend more, but because if they don't value themselves enough in the marketplace, why should I? It tells me a message about their worth as a client. So I'll ask you this question. Would you rather work 10 hours a week at $500 an hour or 20 hours a week at $250 an hour? It's the same exact income. Same exact income. Would you rather work 10 hours a week at $500 an hour or 20 hours a week at $250 an hour? I don't think that there is any person in the world that would say, I would rather work 20 hours and charge $250 an hour, given everything else being equal. Now, the one argument you can have is, yeah, but I want to serve more people. I want to change more lives. I want to affect more people. I want to have a positive impact for more people. Well, guess what? You alone, sure, you can probably serve more people if you were more accessible with that cheaper rate, but at the same time, you only have so many hours in the day. So if you charged more, you technically can actually serve more people based on the same amount of income that you're getting from it. And the reality is that the more you charge, the more that you can justify bringing somebody on, and then you can handle even more clients. You can handle even more people coming through your law firm. So the reality is that if you want to increase your impact, charging more actually helps you do that. Another point to make is, as the owner of the firm, your name usually is on the firm, right? So when somebody comes to meet with you, if they know they're meeting with the owner of the firm, that gives them a message as to the size of your firm, as to the value of your time. When you elevate your rate high enough that now when you bring somebody on, they're the lower level attorney. You bring on another attorney, they're the lower level attorney, and their rate is less than yours. You now put yourself in a unique position where you can tell the client, if you want to have the best, if you want to work with me directly, I'm $600 an hour. But if you want to work with attorney XYZ on my staff, who is overseen by me, but they'll be doing most of the work, they're $350 an hour. All of a sudden, a lot of people will be choosing the lower level attorney, and the ones who are willing to choose the higher level attorney are willing to pay more. So by raising your rates before hiring the attorney, you're essentially setting yourself up not just financially to be able to afford that person, but to also have the structure in place to be able to charge what you probably are charging for yourself today for that attorney you bring on tomorrow, so that you can charge a lot more for you. Now, in a lot of these examples, I'm using the hourly rate because it's easy for me to convey to you the message that I'm trying to convey. But the reality is that there's so much more to pricing, which we're not going to unpack in this episode. It doesn't have to be hourly billing. We can do the same with flat fee pricing, with value-based pricing, with subscription pricing. Essentially, the price that you choose is something that you selected arbitrarily, whether it was based on what you've been exposed to in the marketplace, whether it was based on what you were comfortable doing because you were afraid to charge more, or whether it was based on your perception of what somebody would be willing to pay. But the reality is that until you test a new price and you have actual factual data to look at, you don't know whether that price is worthwhile or not. Now, here's the thing. You don't want to see a dip in income on a ongoing, regular, permanent basis based on your price increase, right? So if I were to say, right now, I'm doing 20 hours a week at $250 an hour. And if I raise my rates to $500, I basically don't want to drop below 10 hours a week. Otherwise, I've decreased my income. So if I am trying to get new clients and I'm giving them my new rate, which is double my old rate, and I'm getting a lot of no's, those no's shouldn't get me scared or worried until I'm not getting enough yeses that I'm simply not getting to the level of income I was at before. I hope that makes sense. So when that happens, we need to maybe back off. Drop back from $500 an hour to $400 an hour. However, before you do that, also understand a lot of the ability to sell is your conviction in what you're telling the person sitting across the table from you. So when you're meeting with a prospective client and you're quoting them $250 an hour and you're really comfortable with that rate, you feel really, really good about charging that rate, you're going to come at that conversation from a place of matter of fact. This is what it costs to work with me. You want to work with me? Great. You don't? That's also great. But for some reason, when we charge a higher rate, when it's new to us, we attach all this emotion to it and we're scared of it, and we allow that to come through in the conversation. So it could be that the reason you're not closing business at the new rate is not because of the rate itself, but because of your confidence in charging that rate. Therefore, it behooves you to get really comfortable with it. Practice it. How do you practice it? Start quoting it. Sure, the first few conversations might be a little shaky. They might be a little nerve-wracking for you. But the more that you quote the new rate, the more likely you are to close a sale, close a client at that rate. Now, you don't have to double your rates. I'm using that as an example, but you don't have to double your rates. You can go up incrementally. You can go up slowly. And you can also continue to go up on a regular basis. So let's say, hey, I raised my rates 25% in month number 1. And then for that entire month, I'm quoting that rate. Now, the next month, I raise it 25% again. Next month, I raise it 25% again until it gets so scary for me to put that price out there, or I'm literally just not getting clients to buy, not getting clients to close, to work with us. You can keep going up. And you will be shocked to find, wow, I could make 25, 30, 40, 50% more doing the same exact thing I was doing before by simply changing how much I'm charging. So let's put this in perspective. If you were earning $100,000 before and you raise your rates 50%, all of a sudden you're earning $150,000 or maybe even more because your overhead's already covered. So now you're simply, everything else is simply profit on top of that, right? Minus taxes. So maybe you're earning $75,000 more on a 50% price increase. And what's crazy is that if you've been burning the midnight oil, if you've been working nonstop, if you hate your life because of where you are with your firm, chances are you're not charging enough. And instead of taking home more money, you can use the increase in rates to buy back some of your time. So if you were working 80 hours a week before and you raise your rates 25%, you can drop down to 60 hours a week and have the same productivity, same income. Nothing has changed other than the price that you're charging, and yet you just got 20 hours a week back. Do that again. Now you're down to 40 hours a week. Do that again. Now you bring somebody else on to start doing some of the work for you. The power that we have with the pricing that we charge is massive. And for those of us in the position to be able to control that price, it is imperative that we recognize that the price that we're charging is arbitrary. We chose it, and therefore we get to choose a new one. We get to set a new price. And I challenge you to go out there and charge more every time you propose to a new client, and just keep increasing incrementally. Unless you're comfortable taking a leap, you're at $250 an hour, take that leap, jump to $450 an hour, jump to $500 an hour. See what happens. You don't know. Somebody's coming through your door. You don't know what their motivation is, why they want to choose you. But if you do a good job of identifying what their needs are, identifying what their pain points are, identifying what they want out of the relationship, and then you pitch them and sell them on that, the rate that you're charging is not necessarily a massive part of the equation. It's not necessarily a large factor in their decision making. Sure, it's going to be a factor, but they're not looking for the Walmart. They're looking for the best lawyer to do the best work for what they want. Let's say, for example, I want to do an extension on my house. Now, I go out into the marketplace and I interview 3 contractors for doing the job. And they give me 3 different prices. But in the process of doing that, I look into their reviews. And one of the contractors has terrible reviews. But they're the cheapest one. They're $50,000 less than the next one. The next contractor, who's $50,000 more than the first, who has terrible reviews, has great reviews. But every time that I call that contractor, I get their voicemail. It says their voicemail is full. I send them a text message. It takes them days to get back to me. It takes literally weeks to just pull a quote from them. And then the third contractor is another $25,000 more than the second. But every time I call, the phone gets answered. I don't necessarily get the contractor on the phone, but I get somebody on the phone. I'm able to leave a message. I'm able to get a call back. It is a breeze communicating with them. They have great reviews. And to top it all off, I really enjoyed the conversations that I had with the contractor. Which one am I choosing? Which contractor am I choosing to do the extension on my house? I want the best work. I want to be able to communicate with the vendor that's doing it. I want somebody who I know can be reliable, that is going to get the job done. With the first one, I don't know that they're going to do a good job. They have awful reviews. I could be wasting my money. So I'd rather spend $50,000, $75,000 more on the project to know the job's going to get done in the first place, rather than flushing money down the toilet with a contractor that may never pull through. When I look at the second one, my job might take 1.5 years when it should take 3 months. I may never know what the status of my job is. I would much rather pay $25,000 more to know that I will know what the status is, that I can expect it to get done in time. So guess what? When somebody's hiring a lawyer, they go through the same process. They're not looking for the cheapest one. They're looking for somebody who comes highly recommended. They're looking for somebody who they can connect with. They're looking for somebody who they can expect is going to communicate with them, that's going to let them know what to expect, that's going to walk them through the process every step of the way so that they know where they're at. They're looking for somebody who's going to get the job done. And if it costs them more to do that, most consumers are willing to pay for that. And that's the point that I'm trying to make, and why I'm honing in on this, and I'm highlighting it, I'm stressing it, because we get so far up in our heads and so lost in our crap that we don't realize how simple business can be, how easy business can be. You can solve so many of your problems by charging more. Now, sometimes charging more doesn't mean raising your hourly rate. Sometimes it means changing the way you structure your billing. So maybe we convert some of our services from hourly to flat fee to mask how much we're charging per hour, because then it's no longer the number of hours they're paying for the beginning to end service. They're paying for the result. And you're giving a flat fee for the result, where they now know what their exposure is, but at the same time, you could be charging incrementally, significantly more than you might have been charging by billing by the hour. And you save a ton on overhead and all kinds of stuff. This is not a conversation around flat fee billing, but my point is that when I say raise your prices, I mean start to think creatively about how you can position yourself to be charging more, earning more for every engagement that you have, so that you can then have the firepower. You could then have the money to do what you need to do to grow your practice, to free up your time, and to really significantly change your situation. And this works for every law firm at every stage of their growth, every stage of their business. There's always room to play around with your pricing and to see what the results of that are. It definitely is possible that you can price yourself out of the market. But until you actually price yourself out of the market, you don't know where that is. And therefore, it behooves you to keep trying to price yourself out of the market. One of the best data points you can get is when you get enough no's that you know you're charging too much, that you simply cannot sell your service. And when you get to that point, you back it back down. You take it back to the notch that would then get you to continue to be able to close clients. So when I titled this episode, Your Secret Weapon for Your Law Firm, it's very simple. It boils down to one word: price. That's the one magical word. The thing is it's so difficult. It is so difficult because we have all kinds of stories we tell ourselves about what people are willing to pay, about what we are really worth. Believe it or not, some of you are probably sitting there saying, I can't charge somebody $500 an hour because I don't think I'm worth $500 an hour. I don't think it's worth them paying $500 an hour for this service. Well, let me tell you something. My family attorney that I use to get custody of my children, she charged me $550 an hour. And you know what? I would have paid any amount of money that I needed to be able to get my children out of the situation that they were in and to get them into a healthy, safe environment. So I'm not saying take advantage of somebody who's in a situation like that. What I am saying is that if you're going to be able to get the job done, it is worth it to your client to pay to get the job done. Now, mind you, often when an attorney charges $500, $600 an hour, they are doing better work than the attorney who's charging $300 an hour. So on the outside, it looks like they're more expensive, but in reality, they might be charging less hours to that client because they're more efficient, because they are better at their job, because they have less wasted time, because they're more meticulous in the way they count their time and they bill their hours. And you can be there too. In other words, you can charge that much, and it's not, this is a chicken and the egg situation. You can charge that much even if you don't feel like you are able to do more in less time. Because when you're earning more, suddenly you'll be able to do that. Suddenly you can afford the assistant or the paralegal or the file clerk or the receptionist that's going to allow you to be able to focus on your client's work. That's going to allow you to be able to do your best legal work and therefore be able to produce the result that your client is looking for. How much we charge controls so much about how we produce and how efficient we are and how good we are at what we do. And we don't realize that one little input has so much power over the success of our business. So I'm going to leave you with this one final summarizing point, and that is, if you can challenge yourself to do one thing today to grow your practice, try raising your prices. If it's uncomfortable to make a big jump, then don't. Make a small jump. But then put on your calendar for 3 months later to make another small jump. If you're at $200 an hour today, go to $225 for 3 months. Then go to $250 for 3 months. Then go to $275 for 3 months. Just keep doing that. What's going to happen is that when you successfully do it once, you're suddenly going to realize, wow, that wasn't so painful. And the next time you might be able to increase more at the same time. In other words, instead of going from 225 to 250, you might go straight to 260 or 270 or 275. Or you might find that you can raise it more frequently. So I still want to go up in $25 increments, but instead of waiting 3 months, I'm going to do it every month, or I'm going to do it 6 weeks. You are your business owner. You get to decide. You get to make this decision. But one thing that we tend to do is we overlook the power of this decision. This decision is the thing that is going to allow you to succeed where others don't. This is the thing that's going to allow you to hire the next staff member. This is the thing that is going to control your destiny in your personal life, because it's going to allow you to finally have the time to do other things, like take care of your personal health and well-being, and take care of your relationships, your spouse, your children, take care of your financial health. It doesn't happen by itself. You gotta be on top of your financial situation and not just let it ride on autopilot. All of those things take time and energy that you probably don't have because you're focusing so much of your time and energy on your law firm. Increasing your price can get you all of that back. And that's it. I honed in on this enough. I harped on this enough. I hope that we get a bunch of people leaving reviews on the podcast in Apple iTunes and wherever the podcast app or whatever podcast player you're listening to this on. I hope you come back and leave a review and say, episode 237 changed my life. Because I listened to Moshe and I raised my prices and it unlocked the next step for me in my law firm. Folks, we have an amazing interview coming up on Thursday. Come back and listen to that. I'd love to have you as a subscriber. If you're not already a subscriber, hit the subscribe button in your podcast player. Come back and listen to the next episode. We're here twice a week, every Tuesday and Thursday. Thank you very much. Talk to you soon. Take care. That's it for this week's episode of Profit with Law. If you have enjoyed the show, please consider sharing it with at least one person. Imagine how many lives we can change if we each shared this episode. Another way to share the episode is on social media. We appreciate your support and look forward to you joining us again next week.